It's important.
It's important to get the puppy in the shot right off the top so that people realize this is a quality podcast and there's a good reason for them to be tuning in. Baby Lilo is here.
Say hi. Hi.
Look
To
how
people.
cute. Okay, so how long have you had Lilo at this point?
Less than a week. So
My
60.
goodness. Oh my
So
God, she's so cute. Can you even, are you like immediately like house training her? Like, does that happen right away?
Yeah, trying.
Yeah.
I've watched tons of like videos, like training videos and stuff, all about like, how to properly potty train her and like all that stuff. And then also like crate trainer and stuff.
She's so cute.
So
How big will she get?
I'm trying to show her booty off to the camera.
I mean,
She'll be probably, they said like max 30 pounds. She's a mini golden doodle. So max 30 pounds, but she was smaller. So she was, probably like the smaller of her litter. So she'll probably be, I don't know, like 25, 20.
okay, she's the cutest. Last question. How did you come up with the name?
So she actually had the name Lilo. So they named the dogs from the breeder I got her from. And I was thinking of changing it, but then I was like, I kind of like Lilo. And
It's
then I was
very
thinking,
cute.
if I get another one down the line, we can name him Stitch.
Of
And
course.
then she'll have a brother.
Just for the record, you did ask for my input, and I'm pretty sure I gave you an awesome recommendation. I think it was either like Thor or maybe like
Thor.
Killer or something, because that's what I would name a dog or a child is Thor or Killer, or maybe, I don't know, Rocky or Conan, something really over the top terrifying for an adorable little baby puppy, because I just think that's funny. But anyway, maybe if I get a puppy, I'll call it Killer. We'll see.
Well, do you ever think you'll get one?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'll probably just graduate straight to the kid thing, because at least the kid will eventually, change its own diapers. So, kids will grow up to like appreciate you. Hopefully, I don't know, take care of themselves a little bit. Like,
Yeah. But then
whatever.
look at this face.
I know. Maybe I'll just continue to be a very cute. Did I send you the picture last week when I was dog sitting like a grown-up Lilo? Did I send you this picture?
I don't think so.
A friend of mine let me dog sit her adorable, sweet golden doodle. She's just their sweetest personalities. Like they just want to like sit there and cuddle and be adorable and love you. And I was like, all right, I get it. I see what's happening here. My excuse for the longest time was that I traveled too much, but now that that's not a thing anymore, I guess I don't really have a reason. So
yeah,
we'll see.
That's why I took the plunge.
Yeah,
I was like, there's no other time but quarantine time.
Look at little baby
All
Lilo.
right.
Okay, say bye to Lilo.
Say bye.
Okay, while you do that, I'm going to.
I'm gonna go drop her off in her bed.
Okay.
Be right back.
Okay. And while she does that, I'm going to introduce you to what we're actually talking about today. We don't have to talk about puppies for an hour. We're going to talk about nutrition, because as you may have caught on to, Rachel and I have been doing these Q&As together for a little while, kind of crowdsourcing questions from our combined audiences, because there do seem to be questions that kind of keep coming up over and over again around some main topics like cardio, muscle building, nutrition, and things like that. So this conversation that Rachel's just coming back into is going to be the nutrition one. And we've got a bunch of questions. We're going to dive in. That's a very big topic, of course. Saying nutrition is basically like saying this episode's about working out. Like that's a very big topic, but we're just going to take some of the questions that you guys asked us and see where the conversation goes.
Let's do it.
All right, let's bring up these questions. Nutrition. Okay. All right, I'll ask this first one and you can start. Tips and tricks for hormone imbalances, specifically around ghrelin and leptin. So this is going to get sciencey right off the top.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh man. So there's so many, like, it depends with this one because tips and tricks for hormone imbalances. Okay. Well, so I would say first, like, what are you doing, right? So where are you at with like your overall nutritional intake, right? So like we know that, if you are in a caloric deficit, you will inherently have, decreases or increases in these certain hormones. So let's just tell the people what ghrelin and leptin are first. So these are your quote unquote hunger hormones. So ghrelin is your hunger hormone. And when that's increased, that basically tells you, okay, I'm hungry. I think of this as like the way I distinguish these and how I study them in school, it's like ghrelin starts with grr. So like when you're hungry, you're like grr, angry, right?
Okay, I like it.
And then leptin is just the opposite. Leptin is the satiety hormone. So leptin, when leptin's, increased, it obviously means that you're, feeling more satiated. And then when leptin is decreased, it's, you have probably more hunger occurring. And we know that these are regular parts of, dieting is one of the kind of not concepts, but one of the things that happens when you are dieting is called metabolic adaptation. And so when that happens, your body starts to kind of change the way that these hormones are working. And so with dieting, leptin tends to decrease and ghrelin tends to increase. That's just part of kind of the, putting yourself in a caloric deficit, putting yourself in a quote unquote, a diet is technically you're starving yourself to some extent, right? So when that happens, those hormones are going to kind of change what's happening with that. So do you want to add to any of that?
No, you're doing great.
What they are.
Keep going.
And so, yeah, tips and tricks for hormone imbalances, specifically around ghrelin and leptin. So I would say I think one of the biggest things with leptin in general is that when we talk about leptin, it's really, I think, related to your body fat percentage as well. So when you get to a certain body fat percentage on the lower end, that's when things start to occur in a negative sense with leptin. I think leptin is very much related to your body fat percentage and where that's at versus the composition of your actual diet, if that makes sense. So there's been a lot of research that increasing carbohydrates can help to increase leptin, but I feel like, especially from the research that I've seen recently, it's more so just overall caloric intake and overall where your body fat percentage is at. And then there's also the opposite spectrum. So if you are severely overweight or obese, there is something called leptin resistance, which I'm not going to get, we don't have to dive too far into that, but it's where you become resistant to the leptin that you do have, circulating in your body. And that can cause some issues as well. So I would say tips and tricks for hormonal imbalances would be definitely, if you are, for example, if you're in a caloric deficit and you are chronically dieting and you are, noticing that your hunger is just constantly high and there's you're super food focused, you just can't satiate yourself by any means, it probably means that it's time to either get out of the deficit or incorporate maybe a diet break or some refeed days or something like that, where you're basically just bringing your calories up. In the form of carbohydrates is in one sense. But with that, a lot of people think, if you just increase your carbohydrates, that's going to increase your leptin. I think there's a little bit more to that in the sense of, I think more research is coming out recently that it's more so, like I said, just the actual calorie bump versus the carbohydrate bump. So that would be my kind of take on that side of things. But I don't know. What do you?
I mean, I think from a higher, like a more macro perspective, just adding to what you are saying, I think that supporting your hormones means to be aware of and give your body what it needs, not necessarily what your brain wants and needs. And so again, to kind of further that, oftentimes what we want is a perfect Instagram skinny body with abs. And so we restrict our food, we restrict macronutrients and micronutrients, we exercise too much to get to this goal that we want, which is directly opposite of what our hormones, in order for them to function healthily, require. So it's understanding, it's doing the work of figuring out, what does your body need? Are you going to respond much better if you put a little bit more carbs back in your diet, or if you eat a bit more protein, or if you take more recovery days than hard workout days? And that can be a really hard thing for people to reconcile, because we talked about this a little bit on other podcasts, that sometimes what your brain wants, what your goals are, what you fantasize about isn't what your body needs and what your body wants to be healthy. And so it is kind of a constant battle, I think, between our ego and our bodies and what we hope for versus what's realistic, or what we want versus what's sustainable. And it's a deeper conversation that you need to have with yourself, because I'm not somebody who's going to say, don't ever try to lose weight, or don't ever try to have abs, or don't ever try to do an ultra marathon, because those things are unhealthy, because they aren't necessarily. And maybe they aren't for a short period of time, but maybe they are unhealthy for you. And maybe we do have to reposition our goals and our ideas, and prioritize health over aesthetics, or prioritize health over a fleeting goal. So I think that there are sometimes, what I'm saying is, there are sometimes different requirements for your goal versus your health. And that's why working with nutritionists, and working with functional medicine physicians, and working with trainers who can help you really get down to the root of what you need to function and thrive. And that, you know, goes to your hormones too, what your hormones need to function and thrive. And then from there, you can make some adjustments if you've got some other secondary goals. But ultimately, I mean, who cares if you have abs if you're miserable and sick? Or who cares if you improved your 10K time if your hormones are ruined, right? So I mean, that's, you know, that's kind of the overarching thought that I have about it.
Yeah, for sure. And then I would say another kind of like, if we're talking about like tips and tricks, I would say one of the biggest things too is sleep. So we know that like sleep, and there's been multiple studies on this, that sleep can have an adverse effect on especially ghrelin. So if you are, you know, deficient in sleep, if you're not sleeping well, we see that ghrelin can increase. So that would be one like tip and trick, would just get better sleep and do things to ensure that you are, you know, getting enough sleep and good quality sleep. And that would obviously, you know, be paying attention to all the things that, you know, will facilitate that. So whether it's, you know, making sure you have a good nighttime routine in place, you're not, you know, constantly on, you know, scrolling through Instagram before you go to bed, all of the sleep hacks. I actually have like a sleep tips and tricks type thing on my website. I can send you the link, or
and put that in the show notes. I mean, raise your hand if you have ever stayed up super late and then the next day just crushed a bunch of carbs. You're like, what's going on? Why am I so hungry? That's why, because you slept like garbage and your hormones are like, uh-oh, you're like doing some messed up stuff. Let's protect ourselves. Let's feed ourselves. So sleep again. And I speak from experience as somebody who has a hard time sleeping. Like it's everything. Sleep is everything. It's more important really at an acute level than diet, because if you're eating everything properly and your sleep is shit, you're not going to have the outcome you want. So
for sure. If I sleep like crap, the next day I am 100% more hungry. Like yesterday, again, puppy issues. Last night, not yesterday, but the day before, I just slept like crap. She was up every few hours. And yesterday I was so hungry all day. And it's just directly related. So
it's crazy.
Get some sleep.
Get some sleep, guys. All right. What is the next question?
Do you want me to ask? Do you want to go back and forth?
Yeah, you go for it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on erythritol? Erythritol. That's such a hard word to say. It really wreaks havoc on my digestion, but it's in so many keto products.
Yeah, I mean, we can do a rant on this one, because I'm pretty sure we've had conversations after the last KetoCon that we were at together, and I had lots of feelings about it. Of course, I miss it now because I wish we could go to an event and hang out in large groups, but I couldn't believe KetoCon, this keto event and expo, and there's like a big trade show floor with all these companies and all these new products, and I just couldn't believe how much sugary, high calorie, dense, fake, processed crap there was at this thing. I'm sorry. It was crazy. Like paleo FX or whatever, these paleo things, there's kind of the same issue. Like you start to lose track of like, what's the purpose of the paleo diet? And instead say, how can we make a brownie cupcake paleo, you know? And so keto was kind of doing the same thing, where it was less about, let's come up with a dietary approach that's going to help people get more metabolically healthy. And it was like, how can we make every dessert on the planet have 0 net carbs? Like, and the result was just these crazy like frankenfoods that were just like 40 grams of fat in a little ball of chocolate that had 8 different sweeteners. It was crazy. And like, of course I was eating all of it.
Yeah.
And so like 2 days in, I was like, oh, like my entire body is made of erythritol now. Like, what have I done to myself? Like, it's bad. And the more I learned about it, I just felt like there were so many areas there that were missing the mark, because it was, first of all, they were all snacks. They were all sweet snacks. And if the point of trying for keto, trying to be in ketosis, is that you aren't at the whim of your cravings, if you don't constantly need a little sweet something every couple of hours to keep you going. And then this whole market is like, ooh, little sweet fat bombs that are 4 billion calories. I was just like, what is happening? Like, it was so weird. So anyway, rant. But I do think that there is a problem uniquely in the keto industry that, again, is speaking more to the most important thing being zero carbs, not that this is a healthy product that is going to nourish your body. It's just like, what chemical composition can we put together so that you don't have any, you're not absorbing any carbs in this food. So, I mean, listen, this person who asked the question knows that erythritol is bad for their digestive system. Don't eat it. You're not getting any benefit from it. Don't eat it. You can make your own keto snacks. You can make your own whole foods things that are going to fix that craving. If you have a craving for sweet, or if you have a craving for chocolate or something that's kind of carby feeling, even if it doesn't have carbs, you can do your own thing. Don't buy this garbage that has 10 different sweeteners in it that makes you feel like crap just because it has 0 carbs. We're totally losing sight of what the point of this was. With that said, I mean, there are a lot of different types of sweeteners that are on the spectrum more or less natural, or that we may have an easier time digesting, and ones that have been tested that tend to have less of an effect on blood sugar, that are going to not be as problematic to your digestive system, generally speaking. This still is going to be completely individual. So like, for example, I really like stevia. A lot of people think it has a super gross, strong aftertaste. I don't really find that. I don't find that I find that it helps me deal with sweet cravings without me like kind of overdoing it. I find that I digest it fine. So I use stevia in almost everything that I want to sweeten. I have no problem with it. A lot of people find the same thing. Like inulin is another one that's more of a like digestive starch, I guess, that people put in keto foods. That can be really problematic for some people's digestion. Monk fruit is another one that people use. Again, because I'm not strict keto, so this may not apply to the person asking the question, but when I want to create a sweet, a treat or a dessert that's healthier, so I make it myself, I don't necessarily use keto-friendly sweeteners. I just use natural sweeteners that either I enjoy, that I know I digest well, and then I'm also getting something else out of. So raw honey is a great one. It's full of antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. It's a health food. If you eat a ton of it, it's also sugar, and it's going to like jack up your blood sugar, but it has health benefits. So I'm going to put honey in my homemade paleo muffins or whatever, because it's going to sweeten it, and it's also going to give me some benefit, and I like it, because I'm not thinking carbs are the only thing that is the issue here. The issue is that I want something that's going to satisfy me, that I'm going to digest properly, that isn't going to make me feel gross, and that I know what's going into it. So long story short, if you already know the answer, erythritol is bad for you, don't eat it. There's plenty of other things you can eat that are going to give you fix your sweet cravings, that aren't going to wreck your digestion. And experiment, because there's a ton out there. There's a ton of different sweeteners you can use.
Yeah, I agree. I like, wow, sorry. I personally like monk fruit and stevia, like the liquid form. So I like having a little bit of sweetness in my coffee in the morning. So I'll put a few drops of monk fruit, and then sometimes stevia too. When it comes to like baking, I think when you're looking to like bake low carb treats and things like that, a lot of people look towards erythritol because it does have more of a ratio to sugar, right? So when you're looking at the bulk side of things, so that's one thing. I would say have you heard of Bocha Sweet or Kabocha extract?
Kabocha, here we go
again.
Here we
go.
I actually haven't.
Yeah, so it's like a very new sweetener to the market, I guess you could say, and it comes from Japan, which is where the kabocha is from. It's literally Kabocha is Japanese pumpkin. That's what it stands for. So Kabocha extract, and the only company that I know who actually sells it is Bocha Sweet. That's the company, and you can actually buy it on Amazon. It is more expensive. I actually have a whole blog post where I dive into the research behind Kabocha extract and kind of go into all of that. But I use that like when I'm looking to make, like brownies or something like that. And if I'm not using like I'll use honey or maple syrup sometimes, but if I'm making it, super low carb or something like that, or if I'm sharing it with other people who are, strict keto, then I'll use Bocha Sweet or Kabocha extract because for one, it actually doesn't have like that cooling effect afterwards that erythritol has. And then I've noticed that it doesn't upset my digestion at all. But again, some people are different. I've heard some people say that it still has digestive issues with them. But that would be something to look into. So Kabocha extract.
I like coconut sugar too, like that brand Swerve that makes a bunch of different products that are, because a lot of times too, you have to worry about with different sweeteners, the ratios, because it's not going to act like normal sugar or brown sugar or whatever. And a lot of that company, I don't have any affiliation with them, but a lot of that company, they make everything from like powdered sugar to brown sugar to, I don't know, all kinds of different offerings depending on what you need to use it for. And it's easier to use because it's essentially just a replacement instead of you having to do like all kinds of chemical math to figure out how much, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, we're all going to react to this stuff differently. So ultimately it's about you figuring out, do some experiments and see what works for you. But just because erythritol is in everything doesn't mean that it's good and doesn't mean that it's the answer. And if it's proven definitively that it's not good for you, move on, because there's so many better ways you can eat a donut if you want.
Agreed.
All right. Okay, next question. Ooh, this is a big one. Thoughts on improving digestion, especially if you want to start to up your protein. This is good. I like this because it is somebody who I am thinking is acknowledging that they need to start eating more protein for a specific reason, which is great because we tend to, I think, especially women tend to not eat enough of it. But that is a valid concern, right? If you're used to eating one particular way and then you're going to change it pretty dramatically, there may be some digestive issues that come with that. So do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I would say first off, just if you are, looking to increase your protein rather than going, if you're consuming maybe, I don't know, just numbers, 70 grams of protein, you're like, I need to get up to like 150 grams. Maybe not the best idea to go from 70 grams to 150 grams right away, probably bumping that up gradually over the course of a few weeks. So maybe adding, like 20 grams a day or something like that. And just gradually increase it. That will, one, help. And that just makes sense, right? You're just gradually increasing it. So you're having, could potentially have less issues with that. I would say just digestion in general, like thinking about, and we've talked about this all the time, like being in that, parasympathetic state when you're eating. And when I say parasympathetic state, if whoever's listening doesn't know, parasympathetic is that rest and digest mode. Like literally that's what it's called. And sympathetic is the flight or fight mode, right? So rest and digest, that means that, being in that parasympathetic state and being in that restful digestion mode, that is going to help with your digestion, right? So if you are, eating in your car on the way to work, or you're like scrolling through Instagram, you're not paying attention to what you're eating, and you're just, or you're whatever you're doing, you're watching TV and you're just getting like hyped up or whatever it is, maybe you eat right after your workout and you're still in that sympathetic state. That's one of the biggest things for me personally, that when I pay attention to getting into that like relaxed state, like breathing before I sit down to like consume my meal, that in itself just really, really helps with, being mindful around digestion. And then, I know you talk a lot about this, incorporating potentially digestive enzymes, especially those that help to specifically break down the protein. Do you want to dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, everything you're saying, I agree with. It's like, try not to eat in a rush. Try not to eat while you're stressed out or arguing with somebody on the internet or something. Like being stressed is absolutely going to, I mean, everybody knows when you're super upset or when you're super nervous or anxious, what happens? Your stomach cramps, you have to go to the bathroom. You're like all kinds of, that's literally your digestion, like in a sympathetic mode. So do you want to put food in there when that's happening? Ideally you do not. So yeah, like being in a more like chill, mindful, relaxed state. And, you know, I know there's probably lots of people listening who are like, I'm always in a rush. Like, am I just going to not eat? And so then you need to balance, right? Because if you are way busier than me and you've got kids and lots of responsibilities, yeah, sometimes you're going to have to, you know, make some concessions, but that's when you, deal with digestion, you deal with digestive enzymes, you figure out foods that you know you can kind of tolerate and handle really well, and just try to avoid eating on the run whenever you can. But the other thing too is like meat generally, if we're talking about like the hierarchy of foods that are tough to digest, meat isn't usually one of them. I mean, that's why a lot of people with autoimmune issues and stomach issues, they're eating protein instead of vegetables for that very reason. So it can be, like you said, sort of the jump from 0 to 100. If you're like basically a vegan and then you want to start eating carnivore, like, yeah, you ease your way into it. But generally protein isn't something, because it is, again, we're meant to eat it. Our bodies and our digestive systems are created to digest meat. So chew your food, right? Chew it, sit there, chew it, cook it properly, enjoy what you're eating. One tip that I learned actually from OPT, you know, James Fitzgerald, he's like a big fitness smart guy. One thing that he taught me that always stuck, he says it all the time, but it really stuck with me because it seemed kind of counterintuitive to me, was to not drink a ton at meals. So I'm always like mildly dehydrated and I don't drink enough. So I'm always like, okay, I got to get more, like get my drink in and like keep drinking, whatever. And so you think like, okay, this is good. I'm sitting down. I've got my meal. I got my water. Let's, you know, drink in between the bites and all that stuff. But you actually don't want to dilute your stomach acid and all the good stuff that's in your gut that's helping you break down the food. If you're chugging water along with it, that's actually going to make the digestion process a little bit more difficult. So not to say don't ever drink while you're eating, but you kind of want to like maybe save it, drink a little bit less, like kind of some sips. You don't want to be like chugging water along with your food. So that's another one. But yeah, like I said, like we were talking about the digestive enzymes, the probiotics. A company I really like is Bioptimizers. We can put them in the show notes so people can check them out. It's worked dramatically for me. I don't take digestive enzymes and probiotics all the time because I don't want to become too reliant on things. And I feel like if my digestion's fine and if my health is fine, I don't need to go overboard. But during periods of stress, during periods of travel, if I'm noticing that my digestion or just, you know, maybe my skin is like any kind of indication that my digestion isn't good, I'm going to get on those right away. And I've noticed like a tangible, significant difference when I use that product. So that's why I talk about them. But yeah, I mean, I think that's covering all the bases. Like do it gradually, pay attention, be mindful, sit down, chew your food. That's it.
Yeah. I would say one more thing, and this is something that I just thought about recently, or have been thinking about recently too, is when like a lot of people don't realize that your digestive enzymes, actually your body starts to produce them. The first place is in your mouth, right? So your salivary digestive enzymes, you start to produce those before you even take a bite of your food. So when you anticipate the food coming, when you smell that food being prepared, when you start to prepare the food, when you're at a restaurant and you put your order in with the waitress or waiter, right when you do that, the digestive process starts then, right? So that's when you start to produce those enzymes. So if you go from like you're working and then you go immediately to warm your food up in the microwave for like a minute or something, and then you scarf it down, you haven't given your body enough time to say, okay, I'm getting ready to start eating. I need to start producing these enzymes to start the digestion process. So I think that's something, another thing to kind of think about too, like how much time are you taking to prepare your food before you eat it? Or how much time in between, you know, the thought of consuming your meal before you actually consume it. So that's just one extra thing to think about.
Yeah, it's like food is one of the greatest pleasures in your life. Why rush through it? And we all do it. I mean, I like hoover down my food sometimes too, but it is nicer with anything that's pleasurable in life to take your time and enjoy it. Like, you know, it's not going anywhere. Okay.
All right.
Next question.
You want me to ask? Sorry.
Sure.
Tips for snacking, how to do less of it and how to optimize it and eat better snacks.
Very good question. lots going on there. So some of it, the concept of snacking, I suppose, is another kind of semantics question. So like I like to eat, depends. I go through phases, but like I kind of like to eat more meals during the day rather than fewer big ones. I don't know why. Maybe it's just my personality. Maybe it's just that I love to eat so much that I don't want to wait for one big meal. I'd rather just be kind of eating all day long.
I'm the same.
Yeah. And I think women tend to be more like that. Like we give ourselves a hard time and say that it's because we have no willpower or we just need sugar all the time or whatever. But maybe there is something physiological there that maybe we're smaller. Maybe it's that gatherer kind of nature that we just, it's better for us to kind of be having more frequent, smaller meals. Not for everybody. I know lots of women who eat 1 or 2 times a day and love to fast and all that kind of thing. But I think not giving yourself a hard time, if you've tried different types and you like to eat 4 or 5 smaller meals in the day instead of 1 or 2, that's okay. It's again, it's more about like, are you nourishing yourself when you're eating? Are you mindful when you're eating? And are you eating because you need to eat, or are you eating because you're bored or because you're sad or because it's in front of you? So that's sort of the bigger thing. My biggest tip that I give to everybody who's like, how do I snack better or how do I snack differently, is protein first always. Because then you know that you are actually hungry. You know that you are actually nourishing yourself and giving your body something that it needs. And then if you are craving something like carbs or sugar or a treat, do what your parents told you to do forever growing up. Eat your food first. And then if you still want it, you want it, right? So there are lots of times when I'm feeling stressed out. When I'm stressed out, I eat more. I know a lot of people who, when they're stressed, they eat less. I'm like, oh, something bad happened to me today. Just shove it in my face. Like that's how I do it. And so when I try to get that under control, one of the things that I do is make a rule with myself that I'm going to eat protein first with every meal and with every snack. So that might look like I literally stuffed like half a chicken thigh in my mouth between our 2 calls today because I didn't have time to eat a real meal, but I'm kind of hungry and I'm like, all right, it's protein. So I'll eat some leftover chicken. I'll eat some Greek yogurt. I'll have a protein shake. I'll do something that's protein first, which is satisfying and giving your body what it needs. And then if I'm like, okay, I'm legit, I need like, some sweets, or I need something, whatever. I've gotten the good stuff in first. So now I'm going to go do that second thing. But if you have an option, like, do I want to eat corn chips or like sweet and salty popcorn or a chocolate bar or some leftover ground beef from yesterday? Like, obviously your cravings are going to tell you to eat some of this like low nutritional value stuff because that's more hyper palatable and it's delicious. So if you tell yourself it's protein first, you may many times stop eating after the protein because you're satisfied and you got what you needed, or you may find out I'm actually not that hungry, because if the only option for your snack is ground turkey or leftover steak, and you're like, oh, I'm not really hungry enough to like heat up the steak and cut it and sit there and eat it, then you probably didn't need to eat anything. Like I posted something a long time ago, like my attempt at a fun meme, which was like, cravings 101. Like if you're not hungry enough to eat a steak, you're not hungry. And there's some truth to that. Like, cause you're always hungry enough to eat a cookie. You're always hungry enough to eat nachos, right? Cause that's what those foods are created for, that you can eat them no matter what. But if you're not hungry enough to eat protein, you probably aren't hungry. So I think that's a good rule of thumb for a lot of people to follow. And that would be my biggest thing. Is just like, I don't even consider, like when I'm eating 4 meals a day, I don't really consider one of them as a snack. They're kind of just 4 sort of evenly divided meals that always have protein in them, and then carbs or fat filled in based on what my goals are and what I'm craving that day, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would say my biggest tip would just be like, set yourself up for success, right? If you are someone that you are a snacker and you have these things in your house and in your pantry that are snack foods, right? For me, it's like if I have snack foods all around, like I know they're there and I am a snacker as well. And if I get stressed, it's like I'm going to turn to that, right? Because it's that hyper palatable stuff. But if I don't have it in the house, then I literally would have to like physically go out of my house, go to the store, like go through the whole process of going to buy that, versus it's just in my pantry like 2 feet away, right? So set yourself up for success. I know there's like a lot of people talk about this moderation type of thing, which I definitely like agree with the moderation side of things. And like there's like a kind of a camp of like, okay, well, you should have these things, in front of you so that you can actively not consume them, in terms of like using your willpower, right?
Yeah. How often does that work?
Yeah, I know, especially with all the foods like that, all the hyperpalatable processed crap that's literally manufactured to make us want to eat more of it. I kind of say, like, if you're someone who struggles with this, then why are you, just don't keep them in the house, right? Don't do that. Maybe you get to a point where you want to try it, try having, some, I don't know, chips in your pantry and see if you can eat 5 chips and be okay with it. For me, that's not like I'm going to eat the whole bag. So I can't have them in the house, but it's like out of sight, out of mind. If they're not in the house, then fine. So my biggest tip is just set your environment up for you and for your success. Because if you're not setting your environment up for yourself and what works for you, you're just making it harder for yourself, right? And so that would be my biggest tip. Like, set your environment up for success and know what you can handle for you personally and what you can't.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, further to the moderation thing, which again, moderation and intuitive eating are fantastic ideas that rarely work in real life because of the actual reality of what the food situation is in the world. And I would almost take it another step where we've talked in the past about like getting rid of sort of like the morality language around food, like you're not bad because you ate junk food and junk food isn't bad and like all that stuff, because it just creates negative associations that aren't helpful. But I would say that you could maybe consider looking at it more like picking your battles, right? Because there is infinite food options out there, tons of food options. Some are better, some are worse, some are more triggering or appealing to you, and some are less. And so it's sort of a concept of like picking your battle. So for me, when I really am paying attention to the food that's going in my mouth, when I really need to, I'm trying to lean out for something, like I have a specific goal, I will never say like, I'm never going to eat cookies again, or I'm never going to, have a old fashioned again, because I like those things. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But there are entire areas of less optimal, suboptimal food that I will 100% crush if it's in front of me, but I don't really care or love those things. Like I could go the rest of my life. I know this is going to be sacrilege. I could go the rest of my life without eating a piece of pizza. I could. I like pizza. If somebody orders pizza, I'm going to eat it, but I don't crave it. I don't care, whatever. So I can tell myself that for this period of my life, I'm not eating pizza. I'm not eating French fries. I'm not eating chips. They aren't worth it. They're low nutritional food, and it doesn't bring me joy the same way a donut or a cookie would. So it's like figuring these things out in your head. It doesn't have to be black and white or forever, but you also don't have to say like everything's on the table and it's a constant balance of saying yes to things sometimes and no and whatever. It's like, look, if it's not worth it, it's not worth it. Cut it out. That's less decision making you need to make, because willpower and motivation are all directly related to decision making. And we know that our brains, we get decision fatigue and we can only do so much of it. So if you can cut some things out entirely that you're not even going to miss, it's not about saying that they're evil or bad or you can never do it again, but it's just like, look, you got to prioritize. So maybe I'll keep the cookies in the general rotation over here, but I don't need to say yes to everything. I don't need to be exposed to everything and constantly be making those stressful decisions.
Yeah. What would you say is like what would be like your top 3 favorite kind of like snack foods that that you can have in the house that would that aren't too triggering for you, but still I would say considered like snacks. I don't know.
Okay. That's a good one. I mean, one thing that and I don't really talk about this much, but like, cause I feel like some people might consider this like guilty pleasure or something, but I really like protein bars. Like some are better than others, obviously, but like I consider some of these like low carb, better nutrient protein bars something that tastes like a dessert and a snack to me, because they usually are like kind of high fat. They're usually chocolate flavored or whatever. But the macros are usually pretty good. Like you're getting 25 grams of protein in this bar. And I won't eat 50 of them because they're not chocolate bars, and also because they're expensive, and because I'm like, I don't need to eat 4 protein bars in a row. So like that's something that I'll have in the house where I'm like, if I want to feel like I'm treating myself and I want something sweet that kind of tastes dessert like, that I'm not going to overdo, and that I know I'm also getting like a good dose of protein with it. And I don't know, there's different brands, but like bulletproof bars are really good. Like those perfect keto bars I really like. other ones like that tend to, those ones that are maybe a bit more like whole foods, like they'll have ingredients that are like egg white and almonds and chocolate and whatever, you know. So that's something that I would do. But then I do stuff like, you know, like maybe deli meat and cheese or something.
That's
so like that's good. They're super easy to throw together. You can make like some kind of, and I like to do like Greek yogurt mixed with like chocolate protein powder and like maybe some like nut butter and like maybe
you're taking all my snacks.
See, well, these are it, right?
Everything I was gonna say.
But they're good because they're rich. They're not like, you're not eating like, you know, wafer thin Oreo cookies because they're 100 calories less, and there's nothing like restrictive about them. It's just, this is kind of decadent. It's kind of sweet or special, but it also is actually whole foods that have high protein that are going to nourish you. Because that's the other worst thing, is eating something because you're trying to fill a craving and it doesn't do it because it's just such cheap, low nutrition food that you want to eat a million of them, right? So do you have anything other than the ones that I just stole?
Yeah, I would say all those. For me, my go-tos are definitely Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, eggs, like hard-boiled eggs, deli meat. For me, protein bars are, you know, I keep those in the house, but I usually don't, you know, eat those unless it's like if I'm traveling or something. One of the things that for me is hard is like nuts, like having big containers of nuts around, and then also like nut butter. But with those things, I think, and this is something why I kind of like protein bars too, is because, you know, things that are individually wrapped, and this is something that kind of like tricks you too. It's like if I have like an individually wrapped protein bar, or if I have like, you know, individually wrapped nuts or like little packets of nut butters, it's so much easier for me to personally moderate that. If I am, really snacky or going through a period of time where I'm like super snacky or whatever it is, or high stress time, because I get very, very snacky with the stress. Having those individually packed things, it's just something like, you know, if I want nut butter, like I'll only eat that one packet of nut butter versus, you know, having that container there that I can just, you know, go back to multiple times, you know.
100%.
So making these kind of like, again, it all comes back to setting the environment up for you and for what works for you. So
love it. Protein snacks. Okay, if you take nothing else from this, it's eat your protein first, because it's just...
jerky too. Jerky.
Oh yeah,
I like jerky.
Yep, like it. Okay,
awesome. All right. Want me? Oh wait, I don't even remember if I asked the last one.
I can ask this one. This one came from one of your peeps, and we had to kind of learn a little bit about it offline. But someone is asking about our thoughts on Ted Naiman's PE diet. So Rachel, maybe you can kind of briefly explain what that is, because I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, so I've heard of it. I'm not super familiar with it, but I do know that the basics of it, it's just PE stands for protein energy. So he basically just is really all about protein first, and it's more of like a lower, and I would say like, I don't know if it's really a diet versus more just so like a concept of really pushing an approach to protein first with a lower carbohydrate approach, and the protein to energy ratio. That's what he talks about a lot, and having protein as kind of the basis of your overall diet, which we both absolutely agree with. Like, we're all about protein here. So, I mean, what are your thoughts on it? I think it's an awesome approach. And I think it's cool because he explains, like, he has a lot of these like infographics. And I believe there's a book, it's like an ebook, the PE diet ebook. And in that book, there's like tons and tons of infographics that just show like the satiety index, talking about protein and the energy ratio between protein, carbohydrates, and fat, and all of that. And I think it's really just, you know, protein first, and I'm down for that. So
yeah, I mean, listen, that's a no-brainer. that's what we've just been talking about. That's what my book talks about. Like, protein is king and queen as far as nutrition goes. And I like the idea too that it's maybe not so much a prescriptive diet as it is an approach, because as we talk about ad nauseum, which I'm sure people are tired of us saying, but like, there isn't a one answer. There isn't like Joe Schmo's diet is the best one, so everybody go do that. And like, this is the best methodology for building muscle in the gym. Like, there are key tenets that make sense, which we talk about and hammer home all the time. And it's sleep and stress management and movement and proper diet, right? Within that proper diet, it's eat enough protein to sustain your health and body function and muscle mass, because that's good for performance and longevity. But within that, like, okay, well then how do you fill in the rest of the macros? Like, how do you cycle on it? Whatever. Like, that's where it gets in the weeds, and that's where you have to do your own work. But it seems to me like it's a no-brainer. And certainly in the industry that we're in and the research that's coming out, protein is incredibly important. It's the only macronutrient that we cannot create from scratch in our own bodies. We need it. We need to nourish ourselves with amino acids. That's, however you get it. And so the approach of protein first absolutely is, for 99.9% of humanity, the right way to go.
Yeah. If someone's listening, what's your recommendation for like actual protein intake? Like simple recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously didn't come up with this. This is just based on other smart people I've talked to and what I've tried that I think makes the most sense as a starting point for people is 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. So, and again, if you want to gain muscle, you might need more. If you have a lot of fat to lose, you might want to do a little bit less. And that again is, if you're 200 pounds and you're overweight and you're trying to get to 140, you're not going to have 200 grams of protein necessarily. You might have, closer to 125 to 150, depending on who you are and what your makeup is. But like for me, for example, I hover around 130. I like to be like low, like, 122 or 24 or something. But all of my like body, DEXA scans and all of that stuff show that I'm like, I think somewhere around like 108, 110 pounds of like lean body mass. So I'm usually eating somewhere around like 115 to 125, because I'm always trying to kind of like be on the more like muscle gaining side, but not overly. So yeah, so I mean, I'm talking maybe 125 grams of protein for me a day, which to me doesn't sound crazy. I know a lot of women are like, I'm eating 50 grams of protein. How the hell am I ever going to get to 125? Yeah. And that's where it's what we talked about earlier. It's about making mindful switches and doing it progressively and, seeing how you feel. But I actually had a woman reach out to me on Instagram the other day, and she's like, I have the opposite problem, because I'm like, she was like about my size, and she's like, and I'm eating like 225 grams of protein a day. And it's like way too much. I'm like, you might be overkilling it a little bit. Like you probably, and there can be some downsides to eating, everything is bad depending on the dose, right? Like even the best things are bad with the dose. Like if you drink too much water, you're going to die. So everything is bad, if you have too much of it. And I think there is some sort of science of like when you have too much protein, it's going to turn into glucose in your body. It's going to be used that way. It's going to be stored that way. So you can overdo it, just like you can overdo fat and carbs. You can overdo it. I don't think that's the problem for most people. Most people aren't chronically, massively overdosing on protein. But having a good starting point, 1 gram per pound of lean body mass, I think makes sense. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So I generally go off of like kind of this like in terms of like 1 gram. I actually go 1 gram per pound of body weight. Okay. But that is with, if you are overweight or obese, then I would bring that down to like 0.8, maybe between 0.7, 0.8 grams per pound. And then even up to like 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, especially if you are a leaner individual, especially if you are in a, fat loss phase or you're in a deficit, just because we know that a little bit more protein can act as kind of like an insurance policy to help with maintaining that maintaining that muscle mass. We know all the benefits of protein in terms of satiation, in terms of the thermic effect of food. Protein is the macro that you consume that takes the most energy to digest. So you're just putting yourself, in a more kind of ideal situation with that. I would personally say that like I would rather see someone eating too much protein than eating too little protein, no matter who you are. That's my personal opinion, because I just think that there's been actually like, yes, can be definitely some negative effects to doing too much of anything. But I think there's been a few studies out there that have, shown that eating large quantity of protein does not necessarily have the adverse effects that people think, especially with like kidney damage and stuff like that. So I think that's something that's like a misconception out there. Like if I eat too much protein, it's going to harm my kidneys. I don't really think there's that much research to actually back that up. So yeah, for me, I would definitely see usually between like 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. If you know your lean body mass, then definitely go off of that. But a lot of people are like, I don't really know, and I'm not, so that's kind of the simplest way that I look at it.
And it's funny because even though we were kind of talking about slightly different numbers there, I really ended up doing basically what you're saying, because I took kind of like my lean body mass and then like added 15 grams of protein to it. So it like ends up sort of being essentially my body weight. But yeah, and again, like we say with everything, it's sort of less about like, oh, were you 4 grams off your protein goal today? You're screwed. It's just like consistency, guys. Like have a baseline, have a benchmark, be consistent, pay attention to it, adjust as needed. But I would definitely agree that if you're gonna go over on anything, protein before the other two for sure, for a lot of reasons. Yeah,
100%.
Sweet, dude. All right. This one wasn't so bad. I kind of thought like the nutrition one was going to be a beast, but I mean, obviously we just scratched the surface of a couple things. And I think that, like we say with all of these Q&As, if we'd love to hear people's feedback and questions maybe that came out of this. If you have other questions, if you crazy disagree with us, that'd be cool. Like we'd like to hear that too. Like we want to hear feedback so we can have more conversations and like do some more research and bring some other topics to the table. So let us know what you think.
And if you're listening and you think you have a question that will be a question or a topic that me and Ashleigh will disagree on, definitely ask us, because we're
so ready for it. We just want to get on a fight on the internet. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like there's probably enough of that right now, but no, I think the fact that we do agree on so many things, and also that you and I respect each other enough that if we did disagree on something, we could have kind of an interesting civil conversation about it, which is why I think it would be good. So we just need to find something.
Yeah. If you're listening, ask us some hard questions, harder questions that will be like controversy.
Something provocative.
I don't know. I can't even think of anything myself except for the stupid squash.
Yeah, I'll come up with something. Don't worry. I'll take some time and think about what we could fight about.
Yeah. And then also too, like, it doesn't have to be with the questions, because we'll hopefully be doing more of these. So literally like any questions on any topic, like we did the last episodes, we did building muscle, cardio, mindset. This was nutrition. So any of those related topics or really anything else, we're both open books.
Yep. Ready to go. All right. Thanks for showing us Lilo today.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll be back
she's
for
behaving right now.
You should go check and see if your house is torn apart.
Yeah. I might need to do that.
All right. Thanks, Rachel.
All right. Talk to you soon.